Hi, welcome to Reimagined Energy. Today's guest brings a front row view of how industries are rethinking on site power. You're going to hear what most people still get wrong about moving from diesel to battery systems, the real decision making factors organizations overlook, and the trends reshaping portable energy storage right now. You'll also get insights into the tough environments where reliable power is mission critical and the structural changes that could speed adoption across Canada. Settle in. You're about to get a practical, unfiltered look at where on site power is heading next. Hi, Francois. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Got a lot of good questions here for you. I got them all loaded up, and let's jump right in. Let's start with the first
Let's
one.
go for it. Awesome.
Yeah, like when you look across, the industry still relying on diesel. It's
Yeah.
still a thing. For primary even or backup power. What do you find the misunderstandings are? What do you see most often about battery-based alternatives?
Yeah, I think the big challenge we're running into right now is just the industry has been doing it that way for 100+ years, right? So we're going up against a lot of resistance of people just not wanting to do change. It's natural, right? It's easy. They've done it 100,000 times. They want
Mhm.
to stick to it, and unfortunately, it's just something. It's the reality of the industry. So what we have to do as innovators, as entrepreneurs, is make that process to switch to something better, because it is that much easier. And so, for example, we took a step back in our designs of our hybrid generators and said, hey, how can we make this feel just as if they were using a diesel, even though it's a hybrid, and
Mhm.
even if you can incorporate solar and stuff like that. So I think that's really helped us, but it is our responsibility to really think about the end user and how we can transition them into the future.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Well, beyond cost alone, like what
Yeah.
factors should organizations consider when deciding whether to electrify their on-site power?
Yeah. Yeah. So obviously, cost is going to be
Yeah, always a
something
factor.
to
Yeah.
think about, and the reason for it is it's the analogy is really like an EV. You're going to pay a little bit more upfront, but you're going to
Mhm.
pay a lot less over time, right? But the decision making process for somebody to kind of step into this new line of product is really going to be based on, can we afford not to? We were talking
Mhm.
to a construction company, and it was really interesting because they said, our mission on every single project is to save 1%. 1% of the cost of what we did previously, right?
Mhm.
And that 1% over time will allow us to be the most competitive construction company out there. And so just by switching their generators over to our systems, or to a hybrid system, they were able to achieve more than that 1% on that construction project. So you're capable of not only helping with the cost reduction side, but then the other advantages that we're looking at too is now we have this very quiet system that we can almost have, like, basically they can have it fuel free at night if they wanted to, and we
Mhm.
don't have to get permits. We can operate longer time periods. We can have our guys work longer. So there's just all these other auxiliary advantages that they were kind of coming to us and say, hey, well, these are the things that's happening, which is really interesting. And so, there's the direct kind of advantages that we're seeing, but there's also all these other auxiliary things, these non-direct benefits of going and electrifying your fleet to something that's hybrid, or even fuel free.
Mhm. This past week, I attended the Atlantic Canada Solar Summit, which was really great. And of course, solar and battery storage pretty much go, hand in hand, which is
Yeah.
great. So if we're talking about portable energy storage, it's evolving really quickly. It's coming together. But what trends or innovations are you watching most closely? And why do they matter for industry?
Yeah, so we're seeing, when you're talking about battery energy storage system, It is
Mhm.
such a wide variety of applications, right? Like we can go from utility scale, we're talking megawatt hours, all the way down to, something that fits in the back of your car and that can be used to, provide power while camping or RVing and stuff like
Yeah,
that. And,
your laptop. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And so we kind of have this,
Mhm.
we're fortunate at Hybrid Power Solutions that we get to play in all this space. Like we do little things, we do all the ways to the really big stuff. And every application is different, right? On the utility side, you're going to be looking at, okay, well, are we doing peak shaving? Right, super interesting there. Are we doing global adjustment offsetting, which is something that's super important here in Ontario, to reduce your energy bill by like 30 to 40%? Are we doing battery backup for buildings? Right, think about we're talking to Nova Scotia Power, and we're talking about all these large fish processing plants. If the line goes down for an hour, what's the cost associated with that? Right, it's huge.
Mm.
So for them, it's a completely different use case to a utility or to an RVer, but we're all kind of using that same technology, just scaled to a different size. So it's super interesting to see how the industry is flowing into using batteries for a lot of different applications and making it easy to do so. So there's kind of two aspects to the innovative front, or like what we're kind of expecting tomorrow. There's the hardware side. So let's make the batteries cheaper, let's make the batteries better, let's make them last longer, and let's make them safer. Right, that's the big thing. And then you can kind of loop it into, okay, well, does that mean solid state? Right, which I think everybody's kind of heard. Oh, solid state, the future of batteries. Is it solid state? Might be, but we're commercially years away from that. And there's some people doing it in small scale. There's some commercial applications
Mhm.
for it, but it's still, that cost hasn't hit the benefit, side yet. The cost benefit isn't there yet. So, okay, well, maybe there's semi-solid state. I think that's kind of what's coming, is semi-solid state, where it's a step in the right direction. It's getting some of the best of both worlds there. So I think you're going to start seeing that. And then there's stuff like sodium ion as well. So
Yeah.
sodium ion's a
Yeah.
brand new, well, a newer, I won't say brand new, a newer chemistry. It has the potential to be a lot safer and a lot cheaper than what we're currently looking at. So those are the main chemistries and technology types that I'd keep an eye on. And realistically, you're talking about small incremental improvements over years. I don't think, everybody's kind of looking for that magic, technology. It's going to be incremental.
Mm.
So don't bank on just one thing. The other side to it, which is less obvious but just as much interesting from my point of view, is going to be how we utilize software and AI. I hate to jump on this AI bandwagon, but I do need to talk about it. How do we use software and remote monitoring capability and all this computing technology, I should say, to enhance what we currently do and enhance that hardware portion of what we do? So, for example, can we use weather patterns and predictive power analysis to better the way a battery energy storage system performs, right? And because you have to think, right, if you're in the Atlantic provinces in Canada, or if you're in California, those are two very different profiles, right? You're going to
Mhm.
have way more storms and salt fog issues in the land of
Yeah.
Canada than you are going to have in California or Texas or other places, right? You're going to have different problems, and you're going to want that battery to adapt, no matter the technology, no matter the hardware, to that specific situation. And I think that's where you're going to get those really big jumps in performance, because if we can make some tweaks on software side and get 10% better performance, it's going to be a lot cheaper and a lot easier than trying to get 10% better performance on our hardware. So that's what I'm really excited about moving forward.
Awesome. Well, let's for companies who are piloting or even testing cleaner power options, from your take, from your point of view, what early lessons tend to surprise them, do you find? During the transition from diesel to battery. What are some of the factors that may surprise them?
Yeah, I think the big thing is the fuel savings. Like we
Yeah.
had one of the largest Canadian contractors, general contractors, come up to us and they're like, "Yeah, we went from refueling our tanks on our generators, because they had a hybrid, so they still had the diesel, but it was coupled with a battery and solar, so it was kind of they had the two input powers there, and they came back to us and said, "Hey, we went from refueling our tanks once a week to once like every 2 months." So just and that was the only thing they were really measuring, was that from a user point of view, but they were still, it's like it blew their mind. Then we had another site that is in Arizona, and they said, hey, okay, yeah, we'll put up solar. It'll be like a nice booster. It'll give us 20-30% of our solar of our power. Turns out it's doing about 95% of their power. So it really, they were like, wow. And it took three hours for us to set up that solar system for them. So I think what people are realizing is like, oh my God, this is practical and it's really easy. Like once you do it once, it's what we always tell people, like, you don't need to go and do 500 sites right away. Try a few, get used to the technology, let it prove itself, and then start implementing it company-wide. And I think if you take that scheduled approach to innovation, I think you're going to have a much more successful buy-in from the people on the ground. Because I think that's kind of the missing puzzle for a lot of organizations is getting the buy-in from the people who are actually using this thing. And when they realize, hey, it's really quiet out today, right? It was because they don't have a generator running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's working 3-4 hours a day tops. They're really getting that benefit and they're on board.
Well, let's talk about like northern communities, in Canada, or even remote job sites or work sites like mines, that kind of thing. They're hard to service, these sites, and they present a lot of unique challenges. So, what are the biggest constraints shaping power choices in these environments today, do you think?
Yeah, so for remote communities, and whether it's a remote community or a mine site, their power profile is a little bit different, but the need is all the same, right? They need electricity. Fuel delivery is extremely expensive up north, right? And yeah, so you could be taking a $1.50 liter diesel, and with transportation costs, making it $2, $3,
Oh
$4.
yeah, jack it
And if
up.
you're having to helicopter it in, like $8 a liter.
Oh yeah,
it's nuts.
crazy.
Yeah. So if you're capable of harnessing solar in addition to your diesel, and if you're capable of optimizing your diesel generator, because a lot of the times what we see with hybrid systems is that you're optimizing the diesel, right? So you're running it at its peak efficiency, and you're not
Right.
losing any of that, right? And so if we can first optimize, and then secondary is push in a little extra with that solar, especially in the summer. In the summer, we fantastic performance, but in the winter, just get a little bit out of it. You're getting some significant numbers and some significant payback periods, right? You're getting some really good performance data on both cost and then also the greenhouse gas emissions, right? You're lowering your greenhouse gas emissions by a significant amount, and that's measurable and tangible. And I think the cool thing with battery systems now is that they have that kind of recording and monitoring device built in. So for the first time, a lot of these communities are getting the knowledge to say, hey, like this is actually working, one, but two, also, I didn't know that at 7 p.m. we were twice as much of power consumption as 3 p.m. right? And maybe we can do something to shift that power load or whatever, or the batteries are doing it for us, right? So anyways, but they're getting the knowledge for the first time ever where they didn't have that in the past. And it's at the touch of their fingertips, right? They can I can do this right now. I can log into I can see what that unit out in Arizona is doing right now. And that's incredibly powerful, almost just as powerful as the technology itself.
Cool. Well, from a systems perspective, where do you see the biggest opportunities to reduce emissions in, let's say, temporary or mobile power use cases?
Yeah. The number of times that I've been on a construction site or even assessed kind of like a military defense sector opportunity where they actually have access to the grid, but it's not enough power to do what they want to do, and therefore they bring in a generator is nuts. It happens way more than you'd expect. And the issue with that is that now you're bringing in a generator in a situation that if you had a battery, you wouldn't need a generator at all, right? Because what we can do with the battery is we can take, we can recharge from the grid at night or off peak when there's really not much going on that construction site or that, whatever, that house, that building, whatever it is. And then during the day when you have all that need, just the battery provides that extra boost, right? And that allows you to use grid, very clean grid. And we're fortunate throughout Canada, most of our grids are quite clean. We're fortunate to be able to use that kind of power instead of bringing in very large diesel running all the time. And one thing that most people don't understand or don't know about diesel generators is that, especially the larger ones, they have a load bank built in. And that load bank will ensure that the engine is always consuming a minimum of 30% load. Okay. So it doesn't matter if that site is using 5% of that output of that generator, it will always consume a minimum of 30% of its fuel. Yeah. So think about a construction site that has a crane. A crane takes a lot of power, but it's doing it for about a minute and a half. It's lifting a load up, it's putting it down, and then it's waiting for the next truckload to arrive. That's, a minute and a half out of, and maybe they work 10 to 15 minutes of actual lifting out of a full hour. So the rest of the time, you're just wasting fuel because you're burning that 30%. Crazy.
I never knew
So
that.
if you put a battery in, run your generator at peak efficiency, 75%, just to charge up that battery, and then after that, turn off the diesel and work that crane off that battery all day long. I mean, the fuel consumption reduction is outstanding.
That's mind blowing. I never knew that. That's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, let's put you in a position of power here. If you could change one policy or incentive, all to help accelerate, the clean on-site power, as it in Canada, what would have the most impact if you could change one thing?
Yeah. There's two things I'm going to expand on.
Okay.
There's two things. So first things first is, look, we have everything in Canada to be a world-class leader in battery technology. We do. We absolutely do. Yet our government projects and regulations do not support Canadian-made batteries. And I know we don't have that capability just yet. But with the right regulations, over time put into place, we could dramatically increase the amount of potential for Canada, for all of Canada to be making batteries here in Canada. I think that's item number one. There's no ecosystem encouraging any kind of Canadian-made battery systems. There isn't. And we've seen, personally, I've seen this happen where we used to be in the residential market where we make our own batteries. We saw the Chinese flood the market and with very cheap batteries, and we had to pull out. It wasn't lucrative for us to be into that segment. It wasn't profitable. And so we do need some kind of either regulation or grants that would allow
incentives, something.
Incentive that would help us build that out. The second thing too is with government contracts is to have a clean element into those construction contracts, right? So for example, we're building, I don't know about hundreds, but lots of hospitals throughout Canada. I think every province has some really big hospital projects or government projects in the works. And there is no push for how can we reduce greenhouse gas emissions on these construction sites, right? There's no, and there's not one GC who's going to win the bid, or there's a point system in there that would win the bid if they did have some kind of green initiative built into that. If you look at Australia, they have a very, very good program that does exactly that, where essentially you're not going to win that bid, that tender, if you don't have some kind of hybrid or greenhouse gas emissions reduction plan in, and that definitely includes your diesel generators in your construction proposal. Yeah. So model it after that. They've already done it. It's super successful. And it's also created this fantastic manufacturing industry and engineering industry on the back end to support all this. And they went from being, lagging behind in anything renewable to world leaders. And in a matter of 2-3 years, that is quick. That is really quick. And we have the full potential to do that here. And there's no reason we can't.
Wow. I like that. Let's put you in charge. That's good.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Francois, I really enjoyed talking to you today, and I love your insights and your experiences that you've seen so far. Thanks so much for sharing them. That's great.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you very much.
You now have a clear view of the misconceptions around battery-based alternatives. If you're exploring cleaner power options, take a moment to reflect on the early lessons shared today, especially the surprises. They're powerful signals for what your own transition could look like. Thanks again to Francois for bringing such honest, systems-level insights. And thank you for listening. We'll see you next time on Reimagined Energy.